Hello, everybody. My name is Andrew, and I'm from Torch Prep. Welcome to my kitchen. In this video, I want to just kind of show you this really fun and nifty thing called the Desmos Graphing Calculator. So many standardized online testing platforms integrate this special calculator called the Desmos Calculator into their exams. I happen to be looking at an Ohio State 10th grade geometry standardized exam here. And we're going to kind of use this as the example. But the goal of this video is to get you just kind of familiar with the basics of this graphing calculator so that you can kind of pass this information along to your students. Students are, for the most part, at least in my experience, used to using, the TI-83, TI-84. Some schools issue the TI Inspires. They're used to using a physical calculator that they can hold in their hand, and they are familiar with the functionality of them. So for many students, that when they sit down and take an exam like this, even the calculator is new to them. And at Torch Prep, we believe in getting students familiar with the platforms they're going to be using on test day. So goal of this video, get you familiar with the Desmos calculator so that you can take this information to your students and get them comfortable with this calculator so they're not surprised by it on test day. So without further ado, let's dive into it. What you're going to see, again, I'm looking at an Ohio State standardized 10th grade geometry exam. And on the top bar here, there's this button called Calculator. And it should be no surprise that when I click this button, the calculator pops up. And this is the Desmos calculator in all of its glory. And what this calculator can do is essentially anything a normal graphing calculator can do. I can do computations. I can do, subtraction. I can do addition. I can do, division. I can do multiplication. You name it. We can do it all. And the cool thing is you don't ever have to hit equals. The more you type in, the longer string of calculation you type in, it just kind of keeps a running total along the bottom in this sort of faded gray box. And that's how you know what your answer is equal to. So as you type in to this window, it will keep a running result down here at the bottom. And as you saw, I was just typing in with my computer keyboard, and you can either type things into these boxes with your computer keyboard, or you can come down here to the bottom where it says show keyboard, and you can actually just type in right there as well. Now this calculator can also function as a graphing calculator. So you've noticed over here, I'm going to hide the keyboard and hide this thing here. As you've noticed, it's got a standard graphing window. We can zoom in, we can zoom out. You can use the plus and minus over here, or I'm just using my mouse to zoom in and out as well. And we can graph things here. So I'm going to graph an equation, just y equals x, for example. I can type an equation in on my keyboard, or I can come down here and use these keys, y equals x plus 2, and you can graph multiple equations at the same time. You can delete certain line items. You can undo your deletion. You can redo your deletion. You can just undo and redo to your heart's content. We can also graph higher equations of higher orders, higher powers. By coming down here under the keyboard, we can square terms. We can hit this a to the b power to go to higher powers. We can graph, a whole bunch of equations at the same time. The calculator has the square root functionality, the absolute value functionality. It has all kinds of functionality pre-built into it. And it also has over here on this side, this is important stuff, a button called functions. And this button houses all of the sort of more advanced computational functions that students might need. So for example, there's a whole folder here with all the trigonometric functions students might need if they're doing right triangle geometry and need to find, the length of a side or the angle or something. They can use these trig functions. They have factorials and whatnot for statistical stuff. And then, even though this is a 10th grade geometry exam, the calculator includes things like integrals and derivatives and logarithms and all kinds of kind of advanced stuff that students probably won't use, but the functionality is there. For the most part, since this is a geometry test, students will most likely just be using the basic calculation function and maybe some graphing, looking for intersections, that kind of thing. So for the most part, if I was going to have students practice with this calculator, I would just have them run calculations on it and maybe do some graphing on it as well. And for the most part, that should be enough to prepare them, at least get familiar with the calculator enough to use it on test day. Now, if you do want to learn more about this calculator in a more in-depth fashion, the company, Desmos, does have a website, and it's actually really informative. They have a video that they kind of go into more detail about the way that this calculator functions, and then they have a whole suite of videos explaining how more advanced mathematical processes work on this calculator if you're interested in learning more. We're going to put a link to this website here, so you're welcome to check it out. But at the end of the day, this is the Desmos calculator, and this is the calculator that students will have integrated into their tests on test day. So get them familiar with it, and yeah, happy calculating.